do the first question, which is, what part of the game did you have the most fun translating?
Okay, if I want to start.
Sure. I think we can both answer this one.
Yeah, I think this is good for both of us. But as for me, well, I definitely like translating anything with Delil in it, but I have to say the part that I really enjoyed translating the most was the Royal Theater events.
Yeah.
Because one, it wasn't part of the actual story, so there was a lot more of a kind of a creative feel to it. I think we had a little bit more freedom to decide how the characters were going to say their lines in this, and also because all these characters, you would kind of mix and match which characters were taking part in the play, and you could there's a lot of funny kind of almost like ad libs that you could make, and I thought it turned out really fun.
For me, it would be the Suicidal Snowman, just because it was a short quest. The Japanese was already pretty weird, and I just felt like it was a good time to kind of ratchet that weirdness up. It's one of those things where when you're writing a script, when you're translating a script, sometimes it only makes you laugh. But then again, that's kind of all that matters when you're doing this sort of thing. Thankfully, a lot of the people who played it, I really enjoyed it, but it was a quest I had a lot of fun writing, I think, because it was just so bonkers and goofy, and just every line was a joke, and that was really fun for me.
Yeah, I remember you during one stream giving me a note, say, "Hey, do the snowman quest."
Yes,
sorry, I couldn't do it. I did eventually get around to it.
Okay, great.
Second question, how much freedom do you have to decide how things are translated?
I can take this. Although, TJ, you probably know a little bit better. You've been doing this longer.
Okay. If I'm going to answer that question, I think it depends on the content. For example, the main story, we need to stick very, very strictly to the original Japanese. And of course, Kato-san and the other writers are much more interested in seeing how we translated some things out. Like each individual term, they are more interested in finding out how we translate it and what kind of nuance and how it appears to the English-speaking fans. So there's definitely they're a lot more strict about how we translate those really important things. However, when it comes to things like mini games or side quests that are much more, just for fun and entertainment, there's a bit more of a leeway. And as long as we maintain the basic structure and the spirit of the original Japanese, then we can kind of take a little bit of creative liberty with it.
This is kind of a blanket question for just generally why did you spell the name of a character one way versus my obviously superior way? And the example that this time came up very often was Nekoko with a C versus with a K.
You can start, Justin.
There's a few considerations we have to make when naming a character. I think Nekoko is kind of a special case. Pretty much every time we talk with the dev team and Kato-san specifically, sometimes he will come down from above and be like, no, you're naming it Garam Barrel, and that's just how it is. That was not a name we chose. That was dictated to us. We're fine with it, of course, but in that case, that was a name that was told to us. Other times we think of something that might be easy to read or pronounceable in English that is similar to what it is in the Japanese, and we go with that. And then in the case of Nekoko, where her name is literally, cat girl in Japanese, yes, I get it. That her name is literally cat girl, and if you can speak Japanese, you get it. But not everybody speaks Japanese, so not everybody's going to get the joke. So keeping that in there is only really reaching the small amount of people who do get it, which, that's what all well and good, and I don't mind playing to those people because I'm one of them, obviously. So keeping that kind of Japanese part in there is a choice. And in this case, we actually did keep the original meaning. Nekoko with C's still means cat girl in Japanese. It's just a different romanization. A long time ago, Japanese K's were written as C's. And sometimes people in their names still use C's instead of K's. So we thought Nekoko was cuter with C's. Nekoko with K's is kawaii. Nekoko with C's is cute.
I back the decision with C's, and I've been thinking about ways to call it out, call our audience out on social media in an
Yeah,
upcoming post.
that's why
No one imagined it was going to get this kind of response. Like it was
exactly.
unanimous we were going to be using C's. So like it wasn't like a long conversation. We had decided in like 30 minutes with the producers and everyone, and so it was just like ship it, and
It's
we got this reaction, and we're like, oh my god. I mean, I could understand some complaints, but other names, but
yeah.
I was really surprised.
I'm thinking that we can just change her name to Kathy.
Kathy, yeah.
Yeah, Kathy, and then nobody will be happy.
Catherine.
And she'll have one of the worst names in video game history.
Yes.
She'll still be cute though. We'll still all love her, but her name will be terrible.
That sounds like a good compromise. The next question is the last year, character descriptions on the portraits posted to SNS suddenly switched to a rhyming scheme. What kind of factors drives decisions like that, and who now is responsible for coming up with these rhymes?
Well, TJ comes up with most of them now. He also, let me just say, TJ does most of the marketing translation, all that sort of thing. And how this came about was one day I kind of walked in and was like, hey, TJ, all of these are going to rhyme now. And TJ was like, okay.
Yeah. It turned out well, so.
Yeah. My reasoning was this. Like, I think when people see those images on Twitter and stuff like that, that's like one of the few ways we have of marketing new characters. And I think a rhyme is more memorable. It's a little bit cooler. It kind of gives the character a little bit more mystique. And that was just one small way I think we were able to kind of like spruce up our marketing materials a little bit.
Especially when we were doing just the direct translation. When you directly translate from the Japanese, often it was kind of dull, I felt. So yeah, I agreed that it actually made things a lot better. Definitely easier for people to remember.
There are a bunch of questions that followed the formula of who is responsible for X line. So I'll just list off a few of them. Making the bandit NPCs in the Persona 5 collaboration all sound like surfer dudes.
So I don't know how in depth I can get into this, but I had just joined the company like a month before the Persona 5 collaboration, and a lot of things happened, and we were getting down to the last few days, and like poor TJ was just like drowning underwater, and there was not a lot we could do to spruce up the text. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go in there and do as much as I can before they tell me to stop. And just before they told me to stop, I was like, it's like literally maybe 5 lines total. These 2 or 3 bandit-looking dudes come in, and in the Japanese, they're just like, we're bandits, you blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, well, what if every other word they said was bro? And it was just like, hey, bro, look at this bro. He's like, we could totally get all of his money, bro. Like, just like really just turn that little tick into a character thing. And they only showed up in that one little spot. But, you know, had I had more time.
Oh, the world will know. And finally, the name Some Guy.
Okay, so this one's on me. So basically, during the way at the beginning of the localization progress, like before the global release, it was basically just me on the project at the time, and we had gotten a huge list of all these NPCs that were going to go into the game, and most of them I had put just placeholders in for the time being while I waited to see how the game was developing and so on. So there's lots of like the Abetos monsters, the goblin, and all those things. And so there was the kind of basic NPC name that came around, which roughly could translate to just man or adult man. And I put in Some Guy there just for the moment. And then I got busy with other stuff, and then things got really busy. And then I never actually got around to filling it in. Like if I had gone back to it, I probably would have just put in man. And so the release came around, and I was looking at the build, and I saw the Some Guy was there. And I was like, oh, shoot. That's kind of weird. And but I went on to Reddit and I saw some people had already commented on him, and it was mostly positive. Actually, it was all positive.
Mhm.
Some people thought it was funny, so I kept it. I did not go back and change it, and yeah,
Yeah.
some guy now is a thing.
And yeah, a church was born.
Exactly.
No, it's great. I love there could be like a quest where the main villain for a quest is some guy. Literally just
Yeah. Yeah.
Next question. Are you limited to the amount of text boxes used in the JP version, or can you add boxes as needed?
We can add though. In general, we try to keep it about the same, but it's not like a rule that we have to keep.
sometimes I can get pretty liberal with the extra windows, but then sometimes something will be like 3 windows in Japanese and we only need 1 in English. Just because sometimes you can say more in a shorter amount of time in English, and sometimes you absolutely can't. So it really depends on the content.
What are the challenges of translating humor? And the immediate follow-up to that, can you give an example of a joke that you translated that you think turned out really well, and one that you wish you could try another crack at?
So Japanese humor and Western humor is different. Japanese humor is based off of manzai, which is like you've got your straight man and you've got the
Character.
the jokes of the character or whatever, and they play off of each other. And while I will say that Another Eden is very light on that kind of comedy, they do it in a very, we do it in a very tasteful way where it kind of builds. There are goofy moments, characters who are just kind of like all around goofballs. They really take their comedy seriously in a way that makes it easy to translate into English. Now, on like a joke to joke level, sometimes things don't only make sense in Japanese because they're based off of sayings in Japanese that don't have parallels in English. So what you have to do is, what is the joke about? Do we have a similar joke? If not, can we create one or that's similar, or create something that will fit in the same sort of situation? And that kind of decision takes time when you're in the middle of working on it. Yeah, jokes are hard to translate, but the pitfall a lot of junior translators fall into is they think that they have to preserve the Japanese joke because you understand Japanese and you know it's funny, and you want the people who don't speak Japanese to kind of also understand why this is funny in Japanese. But at the end of the day, not only is that extremely difficult, a lot of the times it just doesn't work. And with experience, you kind of figure out when you encounter a joke where it lands, if it's something that can translate and work in English or won't. But that's one thing you just have to make on a joke per joke basis. TJ, you can talk about the other stuff.
Okay, well, just to give an example, the one that I remember that was both interesting to translate and a nightmare was the Genshin Analytics. And Genshin is a very weird character. He likes to make these crazy pronouncements, and he's kind of a goofball character, a little bit serious, but he has these like items, these 10 analytics in the game, and they're all these in the Japanese. All of them are these really strange references to Japanese culture and things from like even go back to like the 1950s and 1960s and stuff. Even a native Japanese person did not understand them very well. So when I was translating them, I was working with a native speaker and trying to come up with the best way to kind of keep the original joke, but also to make it very English friendly. So, and out of the 10, like 5 of them are really good and 5 of them I don't think are good. So if I could go back and take another day to figure out how to make it perfect, that would be wonderful. But like I made a Nirvana reference in one of them because like there was a reference to some old Japanese song and I was like, okay, no one knows the Japanese song. So what's a song that from a little while ago that every English speaker would like? And so I came up with the idea of Smells Like Scum Spirit. And and
yeah.
Maybe the younger English speakers don't know it, but
exactly. You'd be surprised. But that's kind of the thing about, in localization in general, but also writing jokes is that when you're working on really tight deadlines, sometimes the difference between being able to write this hilarious joke that will make everybody laugh and want that character and everything like that may come to you may not come to you on Tuesday, but it might come to you on Wednesday, and Wednesday may be too late. So it's really all about just if the spirit hits us at the right time in the right place. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I definitely know. I can relate there. Do you also localize voiced lines in game and that are in the game and for trailers? And is there a different or more strict process for this?
Justin, you got this.
Yes, we do. And there is a more strict process because when you're translating just like non-voice text in a video game, in like a story scene, we can add windows. We don't have to worry about how the actor is going to say the line out loud. We don't have to match anything on the Japanese side. But when you have a voice line, and say for instance, it's like their super attack, and in Japanese it's 4 Chinese characters that mean like, tomorrow you will die and your body will go to heaven and then it'll drop down to hell and you'll burn forever. Like the meaning of those 4 characters is that. And in Japanese, it's 0.02 milliseconds. And we have to match that 0.02 milliseconds. And there's no way we can do that in English. So we have to completely scrap the Japanese and just come up with something situational that would also work, that also fits the character. And like it becomes less translation and more just like creative writing at that point. Obviously, there are places where it's not that extreme and we still have to work within those limits. So sometimes there's this line that we really want to write and it's going to sound awesome, but just, a couple of words is just too much. So we have to cut it down and do something else. And it takes longer to do that kind of thing. And even when we're in the recording studio with the actors, I will very often change lines because it's not working out or it's too long or something like that. But yeah, we do that stuff. We've been putting a lot of energy to making those sound better and be better. And I think they've gotten a lot better. I think some of the Western chapter trailers turned out really great. And some of the newer characters, Garam Barrel specifically, has some of the best voices. It compares with some of the best AAA JRPGs out there. So eat that, Japanese-only players.
I'm still waiting for my call on that, by the way. Son, you know how to get in touch with me.
Don't worry, I have your number. My agent will call.
Do you ever encounter Japanese texts that can't be translated into English? How do you work around this? I think you kind of answered. You touched on this a bit already, but
okay, I'll take it. Yeah, of course, all the time. There's lots of expressions. There's lots of daily common expressions in Japanese that just do not translate at all into English. There's even saying please and thank you in Japanese is very different than it is in English. So often the times you're going to have to use the context, and remember, it's about translating the intention, not the actual expression. So you need to understand what emotions the characters have, what situation they're in, and then you just retranslate it in a way that makes sense.
Okay, this is a simple one, hopefully. How do you pronounce Thililil and Fine if it's not the way that I just did?
So Fine is right. That should be correct.
Yeah.
I need to confirm how the voice actor did. I think the voice actor did Thilil as in like Thililil.
Yeah, I believe it's Philly Lily. Is it not?
Yeah, Philly Lily.
Philly Lily.
So
how I read it in my head is actually Thilil, which, so I think it would be, I think we would have to talk to someone else to actually get a confirmed one. So I think there's actually 3 pronunciations out there.
I'd have to go back and check the voice lines, but I'm pretty sure it's Philly Lily.
So is the way that the actor said the line canon?
We tell the actors how to say the name. So I think it's been so long since that decision was made in so many questions ago. Our memories are just kind of hazy, but I'm pretty sure it was Philly Lily.
Yes, and if the voice actors are saying it, that's the most canon. Yes.
Yeah.
Does Helena also speak French in the Japanese version?
Yes, actually. So in the original Japanese, she says a few words like "oui" and like "mon ami" and all these kind of really basic French expressions. There weren't a whole lot of them. to be honest. But when we were going through the initial translation for Helena, she was actually kind of the character with the least amount of like characterization, I'd say, because you had like Cyrus, who had that kind of like a veteran warrior kind of sounding, kind of like an old man, and then you had like Aldo, which was kind of the a little bit immature, but good-hearted bad boy. But Helena was just kind of there. And so we saw these French words and we decided, hey, let's play this up a bit more. So in the English version, there's actually more French words than the original Japanese. And I think it was just to give her a little bit more flavor.
And last question from the community, at least. How do you localize different Japanese dialects into English?
This is tough. And just talking from maybe not in another Eden standpoint, but just as a general standpoint, the thing about Japanese dialects is there are a lot of them. I would say, there are a lot of regional English dialects too, but I think it's erroneous to think that there is a parallel. I think a lot of people look at Osaka dialect and is like, that's like the Southern accent. But I don't really necessarily agree with that. I would even so far as to say, because Osaka is very much a like business-oriented city, it'd be closer to New York in terms of cultural similarities. But I don't think there is a one-to-one thing with any of the dialects. And I don't think you have to stick to one just because it's like a good shorthand or whatever. I think the important part is taking that character and where they're from and picking a speaking style that matches that in English. So if they're from the middle of nowhere, they're a country bumpkin, they're going to say y'all, and they're going to go out and, do whatever, people like me from the South say. But if they're from a busy city, they might sound a little bit more New Yorkish or whatever. It just has to fit that character, their surroundings and all that sort of thing. But in another Eden, we actually separate our accents between timelines and regions and stuff like that. But it's not we're not going to go into the Eastern content and make everybody sound like they're speaking some weird Japanese dialect of English, because that would be bad for one. But also, they don't speak like that in the Japanese version. So there's no reason for us to do that in the English one. So sometimes when there are cases like that where there's no clear way to translate the dialect, it may just be something that's more neutral. But it's one of those localization decisions where there are some games out there that go really heavy on the accents. And I think there are people who like that sort of thing. And there are people who think that it can be a little hard to read. And I am one of those people who likes to be a little bit more in the middle of having accents and then, but not laying into them too much. For instance, the Nekoko quest, I think if you read her quest, in the Japanese, she's just like, nya, 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 nya. And in the English, she only really speaks that way when she's excited. Normally, she will throw like Nyaldo. That will never change because that is her nickname for him. But during normal speech, she's not that thick, catty accent is not gonna come out because she's just speaking to normal people. But when she gets excited when Oto-chan is nearby and she wants her to give her pats or whatever, that nyas and all that stuff comes in, and that's kind of how I approach dialects anyways. Sorry, cool. I don't know if that's the answer to the question or not, but
no, that's I think that answers it well. If there's anything else y'all want to communicate to the community or any final thoughts on your work with Another Eden or about the community itself or localization or just any final parting thoughts.
Well, I'll just say that Another Eden was my first major localization project. So it has a special kind of meaning to me. And I'm glad that the community is so supportive and friendly, because obviously it's not going to be a perfect localization. And someday I would love to make it perfect. But the support from the community really makes the job easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything TJ said. I joined this company because of Another Eden. I think it's a brilliant game. I wish more people would play it. I think they're missing out on one of the great JRPGs of our time, and the content just keeps getting better and better. I'd also like to add that we do read Reddit, we read Discord. I'm hiding in there somewhere. You'll never find me. But I find the things you guys screenshot, it makes me happy to see a line that I wrote that you guys are laughing about. it sucks to see when you find a typo that I made. But also at the same time, I see that and we fix it. And, we also hear your feedback. Foreign AS, I know, I use too many caps. I hear you loud and clear. And I stopped because, I didn't stop. I toned it down after reading that, because as much as I am like, well, I think it was fun, but at the same time, I want to make sure that people who didn't enjoy that sort of thing don't get left out. And I hear you guys loud and clear, and I want to make sure everybody who is playing another Eden is having a great time. And you guys are the reason we're here.
Thank you all again for your time, for your work. I'm sure the community is very appreciative. They were very excited to ask questions and to hear from you guys. So appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. This was fun.